Prism received a new arsenal of angels in Dusk till Dawn, but before she became the advent of thrones and learned to conjure figments from thin air, she was studying how to summon heralds in the great library of Solana. If you are trying to win your next Dusk till Dawn pre-release, this is the video for you. Stay tuned for top tips for drafting and playing Prism. But first, shout out to our team sponsor, Fabled Hunters. Spreading good vibes and the enjoyment of TCGs, check them out in the description below. Welcome back to the Runaways YouTube channel, where we're looking at Prism in draft today. Prism can be one of the most powerful heroes to draft in Monarch because her Light Illusionist attacks, they doubly threaten effects on hit as well as a long-term game plan by going to Soul and feeding Prism a supply of weapons in the form of spectral shields. It is very difficult to trade damage with Prism after she gets rolling. Here are your top 10 tips for drafting Prism. Number 1. Red Heralds are the best. Most people understand that red attacks are premium and better to draft than any other colors, but for Prism's Heralds, this takes on another level. Prism's primary game plan is to threaten creating spectral shields for a repeatable source of damage, so having the breakpoint on a red herald makes it so that opponents cannot efficiently trade 2 cards for 2 cards when you attack with the herald. Adding on the potential for your attacks to get popped via the Phantasm mechanic, you really want to have the breakpoint to make the risk-reward benefit worth it for you. Number 2. Your primary win condition is Soul. Soul is a crucial mechanic for both light heroes, and it is no surprise that the most contested cards for these heroes should be the cards that interact with the Soul mechanic. Cards like Invigorating Light, Seek Enlightenment, Illuminate, all should be high priority picks when you're drafting a light hero because they help you create repeatable sources of damage, and that is how you usually win. Number 3. All heralds are the same. Well, they aren't, but for the most part they are. Many players get caught up in ranking cards in pick orders, and they might not want to pick some heralds over other cards in the pack because it isn't a herald of protection. Get over it. The most important text on a herald will be the attack power on the bottom left-hand corner. In line with the previous tip, Prism's real win con is Soul, and heralds are what gets you Soul. Honorary mention to Wartune Herald and Herald of Tenacity, which do offer slightly different play patterns due to their unique text. Number 4. Auras are role players, not bombs. Players that are familiar with playing Prism and Constructed are used to her staring down the opponent with an army of auras. But in Monarch Draft, there are several drawbacks for drafting too many of these cards. They don't block and also only pitch for 2. In addition, you don't have access to a card like Fyndal's Spring Tunic to play auras with 2 cards, although Blood Drop Brocade does function as a stand-in. Most of the time, the benefit of the aura comes when you can immediately make use of the aura's effect, such as negating a Phantasm Pop with Parable of Humility, or gaining a soul with Merciful Retribution. Auras can be very helpful in certain matchups like Levia and the Prism Mirror, but can be liabilities in the other matchups. Number 5. Prism doesn't race with damage. While Prism has access to some sources of super efficient damage such as Spears of Surreality and Enigma Chimera, cards like this do not play into her primary game plan of acquiring spectral shields to attack with. Cards that only threaten damage serve as fillers for Prism's primary strategy of attacking with heralds or spectral shields. Remember, Soul and spectral shields is how you establish incremental advantages, and these cards that only do damage do not help you in that plan. These cards are good supplemental cards to pair with heralds to provide a single turn boost of damage when you can afford it, but also give your opponent counterplay with Phantasm. The same will hold true when considering drafting generics whose primary function is to race damage. Number 6. How many more blues can I draft? More blues. Prism's closest analog to other draft sets are actually the Guardians. She presents hit triggers that the opponent has to deal with, and is often happy playing defense and leveraging her 4 power weapons to advance the game. Because her hero power costs 2 and her weapon costs 3 to swing, Prism will often find herself being able to utilize 2 blues in a single turn. As a result, the ideal number of blues in the average Prism deck is at least 13 to 14. Don't be afraid of drafting some really junky blues just to fill out these slots, as you will be able to utilize them in the late game to continually swing your spectral shields to close the game out. Number 7. Equipment matters less. Unlike all of the other heroes in the set, Prism doesn't require an equipment piece to unlock her most powerful turns. As a result, it's usually better to draft quality cards and to send good signals over drafting equipments. Prism can also utilize Singleton Ironhides better than the other heroes because she can leverage the other 2 floating resources to activate her hero ability. As a result, you don't need to be drafting or a whole set of Ironhide for a piece to be good. An exception to the previous rule is that Halo of Illumination being an unconditional way of putting a card into Prism's Soul can be a win condition by itself. Number 8. Luminaris changes the game. If you are fortunate enough to open or get past the Luminaris, congratulations, you've just received one of the most powerful cards in the entire set. Luminaris is powerful because it allows you to circumvent the 1 action per turn limitation provided you draft yellows. Being able to turn on all of your spectral shields into free, harmonized Kodachis, as well as having Go Again on all of your Heralds, is a huge game, as you can quickly threaten another hero's life total in 2 to 3 turns. When you get Luminaris, a couple of things change in priority. You no longer need to be drafting blues, as yellows are the preferred resource card of choice. The overall ratio of resource cards shouldn't drastically change, but you should also prioritize zero-cost attacks, such as Yinti Yanti, Frontline Scout, and all the other colors of Illuminate. You should also prioritize the 1 to 2 cost non-herald attacks lower, as you will often have less resources to pay for these attacks unless you keep a full grip. Number 9. A popper for you is 1 less popper for them. Even while drafting Prism, it's still important to take a couple of poppers. The mirror often comes down to card efficiency or fatigue, and being able to block 6 to 7 damage with 1 card can often swing a matchup in your favor. In addition, if you take poppers from the pool, your opponents will have fewer poppers available to them to counteract your plays. Number 10. Have ways to counter your opponent's poppers. It's important to be drafting several ways to counter your opponent's poppers, such as Auras, Prismatic Shield, or Blinding Beam. These cards are integral to playing against Levia or somebody who is over-prioritizing poppers. Prism often doesn't have great arsenal cards, since most of her card pool is more or less interchangeable. Keeping a Blinding Beam or a Prismatic Shield available for an opportune time will often allow you to claim control over the game, while your opponent is sitting on a popper waiting to use it. Before we end the video, here are some gameplay tips on playing Prism versus all the other heroes in Monarch. Number 1. Auras are your best friend against Levia. We mentioned this just now during the drafting portion, but auras are one of the ways that you can pressure Levia. Once you have a spectral shield, Levia is incentivized to dip into her blood debt in order to clear the spectral shield, as it can be difficult to outvalue Prism blocking out and attacking for 4 every turn. You want to find multiple ways to achieve Soul without attacking with Phantasm, such as Halo of Illumination, Invigorating Light, Prismatic Shield, and 4-cost auras can be very good as well, especially Merciful Retribution, as it double duties as a soul generator as well. Number 2. You can block Arcane. Against Chain, one of the most powerful tools you have access to is the combination of Spell Void from Dreamweavers and Halo, as well as using Spectral Shields to block Arcane damage from Chain at opportune times. Be on the lookout when the Chain is attempting to play cards like Rip Through Reality or Piercing Shadow Vice. It gains additional benefits when they do arcane damage, as preventing these effects can put a real damper on their ability to close games out. If you play a little bit defensively and protect your shield for these arcane damage sources, you'll find that you'll end up winning more games. Number 3, you need Go Again versus Boltyn. Boltyn presents a unique problem for Prism. While Prism decks generally have access to high block values, as all of the Light Illusionist commons block 3, they are also all attacks. Boltyn, when charging, makes it extremely awkward to block out, and you cannot defend spectral shields against them easily. Instead, try finding ways to leverage your whole hand with Go Again to put them on the back foot and needing to defend. If the Boltyn is trading damage with you, Activating Prism's hero ability and attacking with the shield can substitute as a go again attack as well. Number 4, versus Prism, it's a battle for the soul. Because spectral shields present a breakpoint with go again, they also conveniently pressure your opponent's shields. The Prism mirror often comes down to finding ways to clear your opponent's shields while protecting yours. It's not uncommon to be triple blocking Heralds in order to preserve your shield or to deny soul. Dominate and go again attacks become extremely useful in order to gain advantages in this matchup. That's all we have for today's video. Be sure to check out the previous video on the basics to drafting Monarch. Good luck to everyone in the Dusk Till Dawn pre-releases, and good luck to everyone who is participating in the national season.